This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next-day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Halloween Podcast. I am your host, Lyle Perez. We're now in episode 4 of our special series, The Dark Record, where we're diving into 60 eerie, unsettling, and often unexplained events pulled straight from the edges of history and belief. Today, we turn our focus to a haunting that shook a quiet Pennsylvania neighborhood in the 1980s. A case that was either one of the most terrifying instances of demonic possession ever documented, or something else entirely. This is the story of the Smurl Family Haunting, where a family's ordinary home life turned into a long, terrifying struggle against a force they claimed was beyond human understanding. We begin not with screams or shadows, but with a family looking for peace. Jack and Janet Smurl were like many working-class families in the 1970s, quiet, religious, and hopeful for a better life. In 1973, they moved into a modest 2-story duplex at 328 Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a small town nestled in the Wyoming Valley. The home wasn't perfect, still showing scars from Hurricane Agnes the year prior, but it was affordable and large enough to house multiple generations. The Smurls shared the duplex with Jack's parents, John and Mary. The older couple lived on one side of the home, while Jack, Janet, and their daughters lived on the other. 4 girls in total: Dawn, Heather, and twins Shannon and Karen. It was a tight but loving setup, filled with family dinners, school days, and Catholic traditions. For the first few years, the home seemed peaceful. But then, quietly, things started to change. According to the Smurls, it began with small annoyances, things easily explained away. A stain on the wall that kept reappearing, no matter how many times it was cleaned. Drawers that opened on their own. Knocking sounds coming from inside the walls. Then came the odors. Foul, sour smells that would fill a room and disappear just as quickly. Still, they didn't panic. Jack and Janet were practical people. They suspected bad plumbing, creaky floors, maybe even electrical issues. But as the months passed, the activity grew stranger and more violent. Heavy footsteps echoed when no one was upstairs. Appliances would turn on and off by themselves. One night, a large ceiling fan reportedly fell from the ceiling, nearly striking one of the children. A mirror shattered without warning. Doors slammed shut, and cold spots began appearing throughout the house. and always those terrible smells. By the early 1980s, the activity had escalated. Jack claimed to have seen shadowy figures moving through the house. One of the daughters was reportedly lifted from her bed and thrown across the room by an unseen force. Janet said she was touched inappropriately by something invisible, assaulted while alone in the kitchen. Even the family dog began reacting to something no one else could see, growling at empty corners, whining at closed doors. Most disturbing of all, according to Jack, was an incident in which he was sexually assaulted by what he described as a dark, female entity. The psychological toll on the family grew severe. Sleep became difficult, tempers flared, they stopped inviting friends over, fearful of judgment, or worse, putting others in danger. Whatever was happening inside 328 Chase Street, it was no longer something they could handle alone. For over a decade, the family claimed to endure increasingly violent and disturbing phenomena. The hauntings weren't limited to one room or one person. They seemed to move, sometimes affecting Jack and Janet, other times targeting their daughters or Jack's elderly parents. The Smurls began documenting their experiences in journals and confiding in close friends. But few people took them seriously. The local diocese was contacted, but the Catholic Church did not immediately take action, and without proof, the Smurls were left to endure the phenomena in silence. It wouldn't be until 1986, after years of torment, that the case finally drew public attention and brought two of the most controversial figures in paranormal history to their doorstep, Ed and Lorraine Warren. But before we get there, it's worth asking a hard question. Were the Smurls experiencing a genuine haunting, or something psychological, social, or environmental in nature? By 1986, after nearly 13 years of unexplained torment, the Smurl family was desperate. They had exhausted every avenue they knew: plumbing, electrical work, psychological support. They looked into it all. The Catholic Church had not formally sanctioned an exorcism, and the family was growing increasingly isolated. That's when they reached out to two names known far beyond the world of ghost stories: Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were already infamous in the world of the paranormal. A husband and wife team of self-described demonologists, they had investigated cases like the Smurl Family Haunting, later dramatized in The Conjuring, and the Amityville Horror, one of the most controversial hauntings in American history. To their critics, they were showmen. To their followers, they were spiritual warriors. When the Smurls contacted them, the Warrens agreed to investigate, and according to their own accounts, they immediately sensed something dark inside the home. Lorraine, a self-described clairvoyant, claimed to see a black, shadowy figure that hovered throughout the house, moving from room to room like a foul presence. Ed believed the family was being tormented by not one, but multiple demonic entities, including a powerful, inhuman spirit bent on psychological and physical destruction. The Warrens claimed that the haunting had both diabolical and intelligent features. It wasn't just energy, it was personal. The family reported new activity shortly after the Warrens' involvement: low growls at night, whispers in Latin, objects flying across the room with increasing force. One incident described by the Warrens involved a sudden temperature drop in the kitchen, followed by a dark mist appearing near the refrigerator. Janet reportedly fainted. Another time, a visiting priest was pushed against a wall while trying to bless the home. Neighbors also began to hear strange noises, moaning sounds, loud bangs, and the occasional blood-curdling scream. A few even claimed to witness flashes of light or movement in the windows when no one was home. The Warrens performed multiple blessings on the house and brought in other clergy to assist. They believed the family was under spiritual attack and urged the church to intervene. But the official Catholic response remained slow and cautious. Ed Warren claimed that the spirits in the home were mocking God, attacking the sacraments, and targeting the family's faith. The more religious protection was brought in, the more aggressive the activity became. The demons, he said, were reacting. The family was physically and emotionally breaking down. Janet began losing weight. Jack's sleep was ruined by violent dreams and physical assaults. Their daughters reportedly feared sleeping alone and refused to be in certain rooms. Despite their growing fear, the Smurls didn't move. They couldn't afford to, and at this point, it felt like the evil would follow them anyway. By mid-1986, after several failed exorcisms, the case began leaking into the public. A local newspaper ran a story that October. Then came radio interviews, television spots, and eventually, national headlines. The Smurl haunting had become a media event. Soon, reporters were camped outside 328 Chase Street. Journalists asked the family if they were telling the truth or trying to profit from the recent success of the Amityville Horror. A book deal was announced, co-written by the Warrens and author Robert Curran. Public opinion quickly fractured. Supporters believed the Smurls were under attack. Others accused them of manufacturing a hoax for money, attention, or both. But one thing was certain: the haunting was now larger than the family. It had become a public battleground over truth, faith, fear, and credibility. And at the center of it all stood a quiet, working-class family who insisted they just wanted peace. The Smurl case seemed to follow a darkly familiar arc: private terror, spiritual warfare, media exposure, and then doubt. The kind of doubt that wouldn't just question the ghosts, but the motives of everyone involved. As the story of the Smurl haunting spread beyond West Pittston, attention turned from the supernatural to the credibility of the claim itself. While Ed and Lorraine Warren described it as one of the most disturbing hauntings they'd ever faced, others weren't so sure. In fact, some believed there was nothing paranormal happening at all. Among the most vocal critics was Paul Kurtz, a philosophy professor and chairman of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Kurtz called the case a charade, arguing that the Warrens were not objective investigators but believers first, and that the Smurls may have been caught in a cycle of self-deception, stress, or worse. He proposed alternative explanations: neurological damage from Jack's past illness, psychological strain from years of hardship, or even undiagnosed mental health issues. A psychologist in Allentown offered a similar take, suggesting that demonic experiences often mirror internal family tensions, especially when people turn to religion for meaning in moments of powerlessness. Notably, the Catholic Church had not authorized a formal exorcism. While a priest did conduct blessings and offered pastoral care, official involvement was limited. And one clergyman reportedly spent 2 nights in the Smurl home without witnessing a single unusual event. Despite the dramatic claims, growling voices, shadow figures, sexual assaults, there was no physical proof, no photos, no video, no recordings of the alleged Latin voices or dark mists. Even neighbors who admitted to hearing odd noises couldn't definitively link them to anything paranormal. Some of them suspected plumbing, electrical problems, or even animals in the walls. One suggested that the foundation of the house, weakened by old mine tunnels, might have been settling, causing odd creaks and vibrations. Another pointed to a tree in the backyard, joking that the family might be haunted by a squirrel, not a spirit. And then there was the book deal. Despite early claims that the Smurls weren't interested in profiting from their experience, they signed a publishing contract in October 1986, just as media coverage peaked. Their story was turned into a book by Robert Curran titled The Haunted, published by St. Martin's Press. That deal, combined with the Warrens' involvement, raised eyebrows. Critics saw a familiar pattern: fear, attention, monetization. To be clear, few accused the Smurls of outright lying. Even skeptics admitted the family believed something had happened. The stress was visible. The fear was real. But whether it was caused by a demon or by mounting psychological pressure remained the key debate. Paranormal researcher Joe Nickell later wrote that hauntings like this often follow a predictable script, especially when investigators like the Warrens are involved. Initial fear, escalating claims, priestly involvement, then media exposure, followed by a book or movie deal. To him, the Smurl case checked every box. By 1987, the public mood had shifted. News outlets began covering the story with increasing skepticism. Local papers interviewed neighbors who said they had never seen or heard anything out of the ordinary. Others described the media presence as more disruptive than the alleged haunting itself. When a film adaptation was released in 1991, a made-for-TV movie also titled The Haunted, many viewed the case as just another piece of American ghost folklore. Terrifying, yes, but unproven. Still, the family never retracted their story. Jack and Janet stood by their claims until their deaths. They maintained they hadn't asked for attention, only help. And to their supporters, that quiet consistency mattered more than evidence ever could. So what happened inside the Smurl home? Was it a genuine haunting? A shared psychological crisis? Or an ordinary family caught in a storm of attention and belief they couldn't control? The truth may lie somewhere in between, but the moment the Warrens stepped through their front door, the story stopped belonging only to the Smurls. It became public property, an open case in the court of belief. As the cameras faded and the headlines moved on, the Smurl family was left with what they always wanted: silence. But peace didn't come easily. In 1987, the Smurls moved out of the Chase Street duplex. They relocated to Wilkes Barre, hoping distance would bring relief. According to the family, the activity began to fade after the move. No new incidents were reported in the new home. The Warrens claimed that the demonic entity had either been exorcised or finally lost its grip. Others believed the change of environment and the end of public scrutiny may have been the real source of healing. The duplex in West Pittston was eventually resold. Tenants who lived there afterward reported no strange activity, no shadows, no screams, no lingering scent of sulfur. Just a quiet house with a history most people were careful not to bring up. Jack and Janet Smurl maintained their story until their deaths. Jack passed away in 2017, Janet in 2022. They never backed down from what they believed happened to them, despite decades of criticism and doubt. They weren't loud, and they didn't seek the spotlight after the book and the film. They returned to private life, churchgoers, grandparents, and ordinary people who had once claimed to survive something extraordinary. Whether you believe in their haunting or not, one thing is clear: they carried the weight of that experience for the rest of their lives. The case of the Smurl family continues to resurface every few years, especially whenever the Warrens' investigations are discussed, or when the Conjuring universe explores another, based on a true story, narrative. But unlike Amityville or Annabelle, the Smurl case remains on the fringe, too eerie to ignore, too unproven to fully embrace. It has become a kind of modern folklore, a story that exists in a strange in-between space, part spiritual warfare, part psychological study, part media phenomenon. If you believe the Smurls, theirs is a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring evil and the power of faith under pressure. If you're a skeptic, the haunting may be better understood as a reflection of emotional strain, family dynamics, and belief systems colliding in a time of stress. But perhaps in either case, the lesson is the same. The walls around us can hold more than we know, whether it's grief, trauma, or something that whispers in the dark. The house is quiet now, but the questions never really left. That brings us to the end of episode 4 of The Dark Record. We've followed the Smurl family through years of unexplainable terror, spiritual warfare, public backlash, and private survival. Was their haunting real? Was it psychological? Or was it a haunting of a different kind, one born of pressure, pain, and belief? Only the Smurls truly know what they lived through. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part. Join us next time as we take a turn into one of the strangest death scenes in history. 2 bodies, a hill in Brazil, and a pair of mysterious lead masks. It's a case that has baffled investigators for decades, and the next entry in the Dark Record. Until then, I'm Lyle Perez, and this has been the Halloween podcast presenting The Dark Record. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps keep the show alive and weird. And for photos, episode extras, and more, head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Halloween Podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And when something knocks from the other side, maybe think twice before opening the door. Have a good night.